available. So if you can want to listen to it later on, then it will be available online. So let me introduce the organizers. So my name is Géza Németh, and I am the head of Speech Communication and Smart Interactions Laboratory at the Department of Telecommunications and Artificial Intelligence. And our guest researcher is Professor Igor Calzada, who brought up the topic and who is also our guest in the framework of the ENFIELD Network of Excellence project. So some people know about BME, some people know about ENFIELD, but maybe we can share some information about the different backgrounds of those who are here. So BME has about 20,000 students and about 10% of international students. And it spreads from Rákóczi Bridge to the Freedom Bridge, so around 3 bridges on the campus. And we are more than 200 years old, taking into account our origin. So within BME, the Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Informatics is our home. So this building belongs to this faculty. And this is like the largest department. So we attract most of the students. Also an increasing number of international students. That also means that we have a full program in Hungarian and English and a partial program in German. So in electrical engineering, we have a double degree contract with the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. And in computer engineering, we also share information so that it's a special setup that if our students do in the first 2 years everything in German, and according to the requirements, then they can go to Karlsruhe and finish their studies there. So within that faculty, we have the Department of Telecommunications and Artificial Intelligence, which is our home department. And our main topics are telecom, networks, clouds, human-computer interaction, and artificial intelligence. And it is divided across 4 different labs. And regarding the numbers here, we have about 55 people with degrees and some other people. So altogether, it's about 100 people. And as we are an AI project, it's first right to know that our lab, which is about 20-30 people, including the PhD students, follows the following main courses. Like we have a speech information systems course, which is a forced elective, both in Hungarian and English. Then we have a practical deep learning elective that we started first nearly 10 years ago, so in 2016. And then it grew into a master specialization together with another department of artificial intelligence and network design. That is called data science and AI. It's a major specialization. And then our team also set up a minor specialization in user experience and artificial intelligence. We are also involved in an international AI master course, which is called human-centered/AI.eu. So if you want to see more details, you can go there. So that's about the place where we are. And something about the ENFIELD project, which is like the framework in which we could organize this workshop. The background is that there was a call for European Network of AI Excellence Centers, and the budget is about 11.5 million euros for the purpose of establishing a European AI Lighthouse. So there we are looking at key research challenges and try to integrate research, innovation, and deployment. So something about ENFIELD. So here you can see the countries that are involved. 30 partners are there in 18 countries, including industry, academia, and here is a list of the partners who are involved and who have been here during the week. So I welcome those colleagues who are ENFIELD partners are here, so you can also get acquainted with Hungarian colleagues and online with some others as well. ENFIELD is organized according like basic pillars, scientific pillars of green, adaptive, human-centric, and trustworthy AI. Then in brackets you can see the coordinators of these pillars and around 4 verticals, which are application-oriented, so energy, healthcare, manufacturing, and space. And within ENFIELD, we have open calls, a third-party exchange scheme, which is abbreviated as TESS, and third-party innovation scheme, which is abbreviated as TIS. And this workshop is due to a third-party exchange scheme in which Professor Calzada submitted interesting submission and worked together with us at BME. Later on, you will see that this exchange scheme will be open actually tomorrow. So what is the aim here? To attract top-level researchers. These are 6 months time frames where we are supposed to do some foundation research in AI. For this, we have about 1.1 million euros allocated, and the researchers get a monthly allowance of 2,400 euros. So the next round of this third-party exchange is open from tomorrow. So those who are interested in working together with one of the 30 partners can look at this. It is also possible in the conditions, we shall go later on. So for the innovation scheme, it is like smaller grants also for 6 months with an allocation of maximum 60,000 euros. This one is very competitive, comparable to the research calls. So if you want to go there, you really have to set up a very outstanding proposal. So eligibility in both cases that for the tests, it is individuals, but can be a group of people. But the condition is that they have to be from EU member states or Horizon Europe associated countries. So that is also possible that you are in one country, let's say in Italy, and then the partner, Polimi, the Milano University, they are not allowed to submit anything, but people from Cagliari, for example, they can. Or from Hungary, we are from BME, nobody from BME is allowed, but people from Nyíregyháza, let's say, they can submit to the calls that BME provides. And it's very important that even a part-time job is not allowed. So it turned out, for example, that somebody from the University of Cluj would want to come to us, but it turned out that she had a contract with the University of Bucharest. And until that contract is valid, the person is not allowed to come to us because she is regarded, even if she has a part-time contract, as being the member of an ENFIELD project partner. So that was like a short introduction from my part. I encourage everybody to look at the project website. We also have social media, X, LinkedIn, and website. So during the break, you can use the QR code or you can just type in the project. And now I hand over the floor to Professor Calzada.
Jó reggelt. My Hungarian is horrible. Sorry, I tried 3 times, but
one thing that I forgot, sorry, to mention, it's not in the agenda, that those who are on site are invited for a lunch after the meeting. So don't run away, but use the opportunity to network during the lunchtime.
So, Kosonon, it's much easier for me to say thank you that good morning. So sorry because my Hungarian is terrible, but I believe that the linguistic respect is necessary, and even when I'm a visitor here. So thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. For those joining us in person here, so we have just received more people in the room. So welcome. And those connected, being connected online as well. So this is a challenge today to do a hybrid workshop. Let's see how it's going to be working. So it's a pleasure to welcome you to to this Trustworthy AI for whom hybrid workshop. First and foremost, I would like to extend my gratitude to the entire Horizon ENFIELD consortium. I have been discussing with some of you over the last 2 days during the lunchtime, dinner. Sometimes these kind of discussions, informal discussions, are very good to craft the presentation. So, I'm grateful for Horizon ENFIELD consortium, which is a very interesting kind of. I've been in the previous call in Horizon 2020. I was representing the University of Oxford in the UK. So I found, like, things are advancing also in this kind of calls, having also individual researchers contributing and working with the EME. So I would like also to express my gratitude to Innova in Portugal through Mariana Malta as well. And of course to BME here in Budapest, which has hosted me since October 2024. A special thank to GESA for the cooperation. Also here on my left and behind the curtains, Matthias and also Mohamed for the logistic arrangements of this workshop. As I said, there are some methodological notes that I would like to mention. We expect to be an action-oriented research workshop, so please do not hesitate to actively participate. There are some people online, so Matthias is on the left-hand side of the room in order to see whether people wanted to participate. So I would like to encourage participation on-site, but also participation online. Asking questions and engaging, probably this is for me the challenge in a cross-disciplinary dialogue. As we are going to see, the second speaker after me, Professor Navisbisi, is going to also emphasize the multidisciplinary approach of this workshop. So when I was selected as a principal investigator to lead this project, Trustworthy AI, from Budapest in collaboration with the BME, one of the first things that I noticed was how heavily computer science and engineering dominated discussions within the Horizon ENFIELD and Horizon Europe project, which was not as surprising. But it did raise a crucial question for me from the early beginning. A challenge, because I'm not a computer scientist, probably I need to say that. I'm not an engineer as such. But I need to say, are we truly embracing a multidisciplinary perspective when we talk about trustworthy AI? And in the event in Eindhoven, in the Netherlands, I participated in the discussions that, while insightful, still reveal gaps between computer science, engineering, public policy, social sciences, business, ethics, and probably some other disciplines. So yet we all are trying to answer the same fundamental question: how can we make AI trustworthy? And perhaps more importantly, and probably is why the workshop entitles that way, for whom? So this is why I framed today's workshop as here in BME as Trustworthy AI for whom since October. So let me start grounding this discussion, highlighting 4 timely and pressing points shaping this debate. First one, DeepSeek versus ChatGPT, the elephant in the room. Professor Ana Bisbisi and later Professor Esteban Miral from WARS from Barcelona, probably they are going to complement my view on that. But this DeepSeek DeepSeek's emergence challenges the compute-intensive and centralized AI models that companies like OpenAI and Google dominate. Thus, a fully open source alternative alongside Web3 architectures represent a more democratic and equitable AI future, or will computational power constraints keep AI monopolized? I think this very ongoing discussion, and not here. This week, as we know, previously, Monday and Tuesday, actually, I participated in 2 online events in Paris in the AI Action Summit. So in Paris, among many, many other things, I would like to highlight some insights that were shared by the editor-in-chief of the journal Data and Policy, Dr. Stefan Berghurst, in which he emphasized that we should move beyond AI regulation towards AI action. It's a paradox because actually AI Action Summit was action-driven, but as we have seen, the reaction of many people was like that there were some missing opportunities. And for example, according to Stefan Berghurst, he mentioned that the key takeaway was that Trustworthy AI was not just about compliance, it was about creating real, functional, and ethical public AI infrastructure. So he underlined 5 missing opportunities, including the civil society. Second, asymmetries in data governance, probably something that we are going to discuss later with Professor Esteban Miral, is the role of cities in AI. Also the algorithmic pluralism he mentioned as the 4th one of the missing opportunity. And the last one, the role of AI in public health. There is a very good post in about the Paris AI Summit written by him. The third point that I would like to mention, I had the opportunity to participate in the preparation of AI Action Summit in an event that was called Indo-French Discussion, showcasing the importance of DPI, the Digital Public Infrastructure Model, that actually integrates trust at a system level. So as the discussion that I have informally this week in Budapest, it's a shame that it's not in the audience today, but with Dr. Pankaj Pandey, who is the ENFIELD project manager from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Because we have an exchange, an informal exchange actually on Monday, this time at 9 in the morning, and I didn't know that he was working actually on that, about the DPI and his ongoing research and proposal for a national AI stack for India. That could be a great inspiration for us here in Europe, stemming from ENFIELD around Trustworthy AI and beyond several European locations. So questions for discussion later on, probably. How does this compare to Europe's own approach? We know that sometimes we are always self-criticizing a lot. Europe is just leaving behind the US, the Chinese model. Probably we are going to have this discussion, this endless discussion, but let's see how this discussion, I was very interested in seeing about the Indian model and the connection with the European, in this case, through France, to European, let's say, continent. So are we doing enough to develop sovereign, publicly controlled AI frameworks rather than relying on corporate-driven infrastructures? I know that is a very thick question. How the chatbots, for instance, are much more local, a much more, let's say, operational level, how the chatbots in European, local, regional, and national level are being adopted. And is why one presentation, particularly Professor Esteban Miral, will be examining ongoing research on examples and case studies on chatbots in the public domain, in the public administration. So this is an ongoing research by Dr. Pankaj Pandey on the national AI proposal. And the last comment that this is a good news that I share with you, Gesa, this morning. Dinner on Wednesday, no, sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday, yeah, Wednesday, we were talking about Gaia X. Probably you might not be familiar, we are familiar with Gaia X, and we have a discussion, guess I myself on that. So just yesterday, Francesca Bria and Mariana Mazzucato from the UCL, from the University College London, share a new report that is called Euro Stack, warning that Europe's digital sovereignty is under urgent threat. So this report raises a fundamental question for us today, I believe, that is, can a decentralized AI help us reclaim trust in AI, or will it just create new power imbalances? So as you can see, I encourage you to read this quite 116 pages report, Euro/stackreport.info, and I think it's interesting at least to see how the developments are ongoing in Europe. So with that, I encourage you all, whether you are computer scientists, engineers, policymakers, social scientists, ethicists, or even business leaders, to actively engage in today's discussion. So this is just the kickoff of this workshop. So just I would like to, after this presentation, the project that I have been developing since October has been submitted to a journal, Big Data and Cognitive Computing, and the paper has been submitted, is entitled Generative AI, Detection Techniques of Trust through Decentralized Web3 Ecosystems, pretty much related to the stack discussion that I previously mentioned. Just in a nutshell, I will unpack 7 detection techniques of trust in generative AI that I've been working since October 2024. And just to mention, I will also share a preprint that has been released this week, the last version at least this week, that has already achieved over 200 downloads and 100 views, so at least yesterday. So the third part of my presentation is going to be in relation to the paper and the ongoing discussion and the research that I've been undertaking in October. I would like to expand an open invitation to scholars and also practitioners to contribute to an ongoing call for papers in the journal Transforming Government. So I will present a bit the scope of this special issue. So I'm delighted to introduce the 2 distinguished invited speakers, colleagues, with whom I have had the privilege of collaborating for at least 5 years. Professor Anna Bisbisi from Warsaw School of Economics. She is a leading expert in the intersection of AI, policy, and governance, and particularly we have been also collaborating in the past extensively in topics like smart city research. So our collaboration includes a forthcoming volume in Edward Elgar. Is why my comment and my emphasis in multidisciplinarity that will be released, will be launched in probably in August this year. So it's in print at the moment, the multidisciplinary movements in AI and generative AI, society, business, and education. And also I would like to welcome here online Professor Esteve Almiral from the SADE Business School. He has been working on innovation ecosystems, AI policy, and particularly in the public sector digitalization, among many other topics, including also smart city research. So our ongoing research is related to road mapping generative AI in the public sector, builds on a long-standing trajectory of collaboration dating back my time at the University of Oxford in the future of cities. So Their insights today will be invaluable as we explore how trustworthy AI can bridge technology, governance, and more importantly, societal impact. So that just in a nutshell, how do I start doing my research? I think is a very simplistic question to ask, but I think it's quite obvious. Well, I started, let's say, with a literature review, and I would like to just highlight two main articles that I share with my colleagues, with Kesa and Mohamed from the early beginning. And there was one article on scalable watermarking for identifying large language models outputs. That was good, but probably, and this is the preprint that I would like to highlight because he has received a lot of attention, and is why probably my research was at the beginning focusing on watermarking, digital watermarking, and I thought that I needed to expand a little much more. And it's why the second preprint, second article that is a preprint, was about the privacy-preserving tools, such as personhood credentials. So with this in mind, I quickly realized that there was a big gap between policy formulations at the European level, like AI Act, and most recently, the Draghi report, and the real-world generative AI applications. So these two policy documents are preferential in the EU policy ecosystem. So I start unpacking them. Just in a nutshell, AI Act establishes, as you probably know, establishes a risk-based regulatory framework, while the Draghi report positions AI as a strategic enabler of economic resilience, creating tensions between trust, regulation, and innovation. You know, this ongoing discussion about regulation versus innovation. My action research in ENFIELD, Horizon Europe project, highlights how decentralized Web3 mechanisms can enhance AI trust, addressing gaps in AI governance. Probably the AI Act lacks, and this is the main criticism so far at least, lacks concrete implementation strategies for ensuring trust in generative AI, making privacy-preserving AI detection techniques essential for high-risk application. The Draghi report is obvious that promotes AI-driven economic growth, but overlooks, and probably this is for me my reading, overlooks the need for decentralized governance models, raising concerns about monopoly control and AI accountability. So this action research has aimed to bridge policy and technology, proposing these 7 techniques that I will present slightly because there is a preprint that you can, of course, read and provide feedback or even criticism on that. So proposing 7 techniques to ensure trustworthy AI, aligning technical solutions with regulatory standards while maintaining democratic integrity in AI ecosystems. I'm not going to go in depth because I wanted to just to provide a space for you to participate, and also my colleagues in Warsaw and Barcelona. But just in a nutshell, just to give you some insights on that, you can download the preprint with this QR code. The reference is just on there, but we cannot see here because the screen is just cut. So as I mentioned, I started with AI Act and Draghi report, and just in a broad sense, you know, AI Act is our risk classification, high risk, transparency obligation, data governance, human oversight, compliance, and penalties, innovation sandboxes. We were analyzing quite a lot this concept of sandboxes, national AI strategy, and public sector AI applications, as Professor Esteban Almiral is going to enlighten us with cases, not only Europe, but beyond Europe, on chatbots. And on the other hand, the Draghi report, let's say, focus on trustworthiness is very present in the whole report. Also, economic competitiveness is the main aim of the report. High-stake sectors, participatory governance, regulatory frameworks, challenges in decentralization, equitable innovation, and technological versus societal context. So this section presents the policy foundations for AI trustworthiness, and these 2 documents set a regulatory and strategic landscape for developing trustworthy AI mechanisms within the European context. However, and this is why I introduced in the article the 7 decentralized detection techniques that are as follows: federated learning, the blockchain-based provenance tracking, the zero knowledge proofs, DAOs for crowdsourced verification, AI-powered digital watermarking. As I said before, that was the starting point of this research. Probably you are familiar also with explainable AI, and also, as I mentioned before, the privacy-preserving machine learning. These technical solutions probably help operationalize AI trust while aligning with EU regulatory goals. The definitions of them probably, I don't know if it's worth, because I'm in front of an audience that is very tech savvy, so probably it's not worth doing that. Each of them are defined in the article, but more importantly, and that's probably something that we've been struggling while conducting this research, and is what about the real world applications of this, because as we know, even in the Eurostack report yesterday, when I was quickly reading it, I noticed that this discussion is there. I mean, how to organize the trust in terms of having decentralized models. So in this sense, the article includes and proposes case studies, and even what is more important, I'm going to just mention one by one each of them. For end users, for a case of federated learning, the benefits, trustworthy AI, the benefits could be seen end users and citizens, and is why the first case study that was included is Gaia X, which apparently, and I say apparently because it's under discussion at the moment, the limitations of this approach enables privacy-first AI model training, ensuring individuals and retain control over their data while fostering AI transparency in federated data sharing ecosystems. But this is why I believe that this Eurostack report, at least approach, could be complementing the drawbacks that Gaia X couldn't achieve, and probably, and this is in the report, because the struggle between France and Germany. I think it's fair to say that from my neutral perspective, it's very clear that even the report underlines, emphasizes this fact. I mean, it's not a technical issue. It's much more, let's say, institutional, even a political willingness. This is the problem. I don't know what you think. I know that I'm provoking the audience. I'm seeing some reactions because I'm shaking the heads. So I'm happy to have a respectful and neutral discussion. We are in academia, but I think it's worth also mentioning that. Okay. The second one is the blockchain-based provenance tracking. The benefits, trustworthy for human communities and organizations. And for example, the paper identified tools like Origin Trail, ensuring organizations and consumers can entrust authenticity and data and products. The third one, the set KP, the benefits are regulators and policymakers, given that the case study that we included was the European blockchain services infrastructure that actually is part of the Eurostack, as yesterday I noticed when I was reading the report. The fourth one, DAOs, which means the decentralized autonomous organizations. The benefits are the communities and organizations. The Aragon is very well-known case in the Web3 ecosystem, empowering decision-making and fostering collaborative governance among community members. The fifth case is the C2PA, quite broadly extended version of digital watermarking, supporting industry, but pretty much media, has been used a lot in media ecosystem by providing robust frameworks. The sixth one is a project called Trust AI that focuses on user-centric designs that prioritize transparency. And the last one, that is the privacy-preserving tool, is a project called Musketeer, supporting industrial ecosystems by providing robust frameworks for privacy-preserving analysis. So as we can see from, and that's the aim, from the macro level of discussion about trustworthy AI, we can just ended up examining different case studies and analysis. And at the end of the day, the question remains there, and it's who benefits from AI? So the answer was we can do analysis through a stakeholder-specific trust outcomes. So as I said, you have the preprint here to comment, and I would like to add another layer to this. As I said at the early beginning, I'm glad to announce a call for papers on all these topics. So you have the QR code. The call for papers is open until July 31st in the Emerald Journal Impact Factor 2.7. I know that DORA is important, but still we quantified journals and publications. So at least in public policy terms is an important journal. So this call for papers has been announced as a special issue, and is very much an evolution of this project on generative AI and also urban AI policy challenges ahead. So we are happy to collect submissions. Before, probably we are going to discuss this with Professor Navisvisi after myself, and also with Professor Esteve Almirall, respectively, in Warsaw and Barcelona. And my last final remarks are, okay, this is the information about the submission. So it's open, as you can read here. So submissions are open until 21st of July. So final remarks. And I would like to draw your attention to these 5 final remarks. That is probably a summary that I have said so far. Trustworthy AI, beyond regulations and tech capacity. We often discuss trust in AI as if it's just about regulation and technological capacity. Probably we agree on that. But the real question is who controls AI, who sets the rules, and probably, as I said, and we try to do in the paper, in the preprint, who benefits from that. So Europe's digital sovereignty seems to be at stake. Will AI remain in the hands of corporate monopolies, or can decentralized, transparent governance models provide an alternative? And it's why, I don't know, there is a proposal at the moment on the table, a Eurostack, a European alternative. Is it possible? Is not possible? So this is the first remark that I would like to put here on the table. The second one is something that probably I did not develop that much. It is misinformation. Can detection alone save us? Is why the way in which I frame this. AI generated misinformation is a weapon. It's a weapon related to deep fakes, synthetic media, and also algorithmic propaganda we have seen in many elections. So detection tools like provenance, blockchain provenance, and AI watermarking could help. But let's be realistic, they might not be enough. Should we move towards community-led verification models? I know that the US is very intensive in DAOs. I know that Europe is less intensive in DAOs. So I'm more than welcome to hear your views on that. Or trust in AI doom. So this is the second remark. The third one is something that from which I started, and I think is very, let's say, timely discussion: open source AI versus computing power, DeepSeek versus ChatGPT. So for years, we have been told that AI dominance was about compute power. Only big tech could build truly powerful models. But DeepSeek, probably we all agree, I don't know, let's talk about that, has proven otherwise. I mean, open source models, even last day, ChatGPT CEO just recognized and acknowledged that they did wrong, just starting like non-profit and ending up being very centralized model and being a profit model. So Chinese probably has just demonstrated that this is not the way to do it, but let's see, let's discuss about this. But so open source models can compete without massive compute infrastructure. So could this signal a shift towards a more, let's say, open, democratized AI landscape? I think it's an open question. I have no answer to it. The fourth point is about the cities, the lack of acknowledgement that cities are very important players, also in geopolitics, I would say. So cities are adopting AI in governance quicker than probably regional governments and national governments. But there is a thin line between smart governance and mass surveillance. Who owns urban AI? The same question that we had when we were analyzing the smart cities is exactly the same. So the questions remains in the same place. Who decides what's ethical? And Europe must choose AI for citizens or AI that watches, let's say, citizens. So this is the whole discussion of chatbot adoptions in the public sector, but Professor Esteban Miral from Barcelona will give us a very interesting insight on practical cases on that. And the last point is beyond compliance. Trustworthy AI needs probably community governance. So AI Act focuses on compliance, but compliance that not equal trust. So it should be moved beyond the top-down AI regulation, probably AI Act, Draghi report, and toward participatory community-driven governance model like some other like data cops or DAOs or and other models that they are experimenting at the moment. So that's the last point is trust isn't about following rules. It's about real transparency and engagement. So without further ado, I would like to open discussion because that was the introduction of this workshop. So probably we can take some of the questions or some of the comments that you would like to raise. And in the meantime, we are going to prepare the next speaker. But please feel free to raise your hand and ask for a microphone. Thank you very much. We have the two speakers already raised. So any question in the room about the scope of the workshop? Okay, so just moving to the next presentation. And so I have already introduced on the right-hand side, Anna, Professor Anna Bispisi from Warsaw School of Economics, SGH. So please, the floor is yours, Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to share my screen. So just give me a sec before all right. So I think now I'm sharing it. No, let me do it again. And if you need it, then maybe I'll ask for your help. Let me see. So I share this screen. So I guess you can see it now. All right. So first and foremost, thank you very much for this most kind invitation to join this amazing workshop. I've definitely checked all details about the ENFIELD Horizon Europe project. And I just wanted to congratulate you on this. And I'm very happy to be a part of it. So my name is Anna Bispisi, not Bispisi, my Hungarian colleagues. And I am a professor at the Warsaw School of Economics, SGH, but I'm also a rector's representative for the PhD school. So in this capacity, there are several projects that we are involved in. And last semester, we had the greatest pleasure of welcoming Professor Calzada as visiting professor, being engaged in several functions at our university. So this is like a very good example of collaboration bringing real results. As you can see on the slides, I'm also the acting editor-in-chief of 2 journals. One of them is Transforming Government, and the other one is Digital Policy, Regulation and Governance, both very closely aligned to the content of the Horizon project that we are part of today. And therefore, should you think that there is any paper that you would like submitted, I would definitely very happy to consider it. Both journals have impact factor, both have Scopus index, also ABS listed. So these are really like a very good opportunities. Finally, I'd also like to let you know that I'm chair of a international conference, the Research Innovation Forum, that will be held already for the 7th time, this time in Barcelona in April. So should you be interested, also give me a shout and I'll be very happy to guide you. Now, the next slide. So I'm going to maximize it a little bit. If I speak too fast, just let me know. If there are any technical issues, also let me know so that we can ensure that the delivery is proper. So this is where we are. Got it. I think you should be able to see it properly. Good. The next one. So as Professor Calzada mentioned, we have just completed and submitted a book. The publisher is Edward Elgar, and it was a fascinating journey because we have realized that even if everyone talks about AI and even if the academic community is very much engaged in research in it, there are so many new topics emerging and so many questions that remain unanswered. So in an attempt to navigate this complex field, we have focused on this book. And we are really looking forward to it being published. And it was a wonderful collaboration, and I couldn't be more grateful to Professor Calzada for his involvement in this project. So just tune in whenever it is online. We are definitely going to share the details with you. Now, this is the outline of my presentation today. So there are always questions that I ask. And the idea here is to find a way to address these questions. So what do we know about AI and why it matters? What do we see happening in this course on AI today? What are the major developments in the politics of AI and what trends are they indicative of? What are the key caveats the rise of AI is a source of today? Then I do focus on the case of the European Union, and I can be very critical. And then, and by means of conclusion, trustworthy AI for whom? And I also ask for what? So this slide basically is designed to raise your questions for the ensuing discussion. We clearly know that AI has like a range of applications, but I would like to be more precise and to use the term AI-based tools and application domains. So a lot has been written about it. Professor Calzada has already mentioned that I have been active in the field of research on smart cities. So there is a great variety of issues where AI-based tools can prove their amazing potential, both in terms of ensuring safety and security in smart cities, both in terms of improving the business environment, etc., etc. So the sky is the limit, essentially, however, and this is precisely what we are discussing today and what the project is about, so trustworthy AI and how to conceptualize and how to deal with it. Tune in, more will come later. Professor Calzada has already mentioned it. This is a wonderful special issue, which I hope will serve as a forum of discussion on the really edgy topics related to AI and the question of trustworthiness in relation to AI. So we will return to that. And now, what do we know about AI and why it matters? So in the broad debate, both in the domain of politics and in the public discourse, mostly led by journalists and experts, etc., we frequently focus too much on AI as if it were a box, without necessarily looking into what is inside. So we really have to remember that AI, it is all about neural networks, it is about the capacities of semiconductors, but it's also about machine learning. And there would be no AI if there was no data and no algorithms. So this is something that we really have to remember about, because if not, then we get ourselves into the problem of ontological reification of AI, or as Professor Calzada refers to it, the AI hammering. Now consider this, we all talk about AI, without necessarily realizing that AI is actually a means, a tool that we have at our disposal. So if we start reifying AI as if it was an on, something that exists independently of us, which is not necessarily the case, considering that we undertake certain actions in this respect, then, well, there is like an issue. So consider the implications of AI being considered as an agency. Does it have any purposeful agency? I don't really think so. So the reason why I talk about the Narcissus syndrome, as in the Greek mythology, is because we frequently just, particularly here in Europe, we just look at AI and we see the reflection of AI as if in the mirror. And then because we just like the concept, because we are frozen basically by the sheer spectrum of possibilities that it opens, we kind of are unable to move in a way. It's not necessarily that it's so pretty, but it's just, we just are stuck there watching it. So this is why my question is it AI for itself or AI for a reason? So which reason would that be? And therefore the question, AI for what? So for instance, in the European Union, well, really, there has been an overemphasis on AI for good, AI, ethical AI, etc. But we don't really have concepts that would define very precisely what this AI that we want to work on is for. Another concept that we see in the discourse revolving or unfolding in the European Union is the concept of digital sovereignty. Clearly, the report that Professor Calzada has mentioned, by Professor Barry and all, is a very good contribution. However, I just wonder to what extent the concept of digital sovereignty is a tool for us to develop a strategy that would allow us to reap or harvest the benefits of AI. So we are going to return to it. So what are the major developments in the politics of AI? And what trends are they indicative of? So here I would like to highlight briefly the capacity infrastructure. So about the United States, we have all heard about the plans of President Trump about investing essentially $500 billion in US infrastructure. Let's just jump to France. So President Macron talks about 109 billion euros. So this is also like a thing. About the input or investment that China is conducting, we have no data about it. But now, what is it indicative of? The moment President Macron announces his plan about investing in AI infrastructure, then basically what I see is fragmentation in Europe. And I also see like a return to the very specific model of industrialization that we have also seen by now in relation to the defense industry and the defense industry complex. Following Brexit, if you may want to notice, it is France that has the major defense industry complex, basically employing like 200,000 people directly, with a great number of companies being involved directly in it. Then you also have to think that there is a great number of related businesses and industries. So when you recall the debate on the EU's defense capacity, and if you think about how these issues are being shaped, then I'm very much afraid that the discussion and the politics of AI as it unfolds in the European Union takes us in the same direction. So just point of caution. So this takes us also to the question of the regulation versus innovation trap. And I have some more about it in following slides. Here, however, I would like to say the following. Well, the United States and the European Union, we have like strikingly different approaches to innovation and the market. So whereas in the United States, we innovate and then regulate. In the European Union, we kind of want to make sure that everything is regulated first, which as a result very frequently has a negative impact on our innovation capacity. So this is something that I would like you to think about. Clearly, China will have a different approach given the political system and the specific resulting capacity that China has to manage and govern as innovation and development. So we're going to return to this point as well. So now, what are the key caveats the rise of AI as a source today? So I have the question, who can actually use it and who can benefit from it? I would say in all discussions on AI, even today, we just talk AI. We can check trustworthiness, we can do it in this way, the technical one and so on. Professor Calzada has already mentioned that, well, the discussion of AI, similarly in the field of smart cities, has been very strongly influenced by research in computer science. And then for a long period of time, we were really missing the connection between AI viewed as an artifact of interest to the computer science community and the rest. So it's very important that today we also talk about AI in connection to politics and in connection to democracy. So as such, very important. But now there are different layers of the big question, who can actually use it? So if you look at our society as a stratified whole, then you will understand that, let's say, if you look at generational differences, there will be a great number of society members that will never use AI, or they'll be using AI without necessarily knowing that they are using it. There is a great number of people that have no access to devices that would enable them to use AI, and there is also a great number of people that have no access to internet. And this is Europe, okay? And now we could also look at the world as a whole, so the global south and the global north. Now, just consider there are people in the year 2025 that are at the risk of starvation. I'm very much afraid that those people do not have access to AI. And the discussion that we have about AI today is not very much their piece of cake, if they only had one. So it's like a very big issue emerging. And then there is this central point, the geopolitics, the political economy of AI. The question is, who has the capacity to develop AI, who has the capacity to invest in it, and who has the capacity to actually sell AI-based products, services, you name it. So what we see is that, unfortunately we see like 2 or maybe 3 poles emerging in the debate. So we have the United States, then the European Union tries to do something, but we'll talk about it. Then there is China, but there are also other players of which we very frequently forget in our conversations. So let's have a look at the next slide. So this is the case of the European Union. Can the European Union respond to the challenge of AI? So what I would like to do in this small subsection is to look at the EU's performance in perspective, and then funding and access to capital. Here I would like to focus a little bit on venture capital. Then a little bit more critical insight into the innovation, industrial policy, and competition policy trap. I call it Nelson Holt. And then regulation. I don't want to say it's regulation stupid, but kind of, this is the motto that we have. And then there is the question of competitiveness. So clearly, Mario Draghi's report places AI as one of the key means of, let's say, boosting, maintaining, consolidating EU's resilience and competitiveness. But as an economist as well as political scientist, I really had like the very important question. So what is competitiveness and what is at stake in it? So in the paper that we have just published in Launches Policy, which is essentially aimed at exploring the question to what extent ICT, including AI, improve, let's say, business context in smart cities, so that as a result, cities can get more competitive. We have devised this approach, so normative approach to competitiveness and this prescriptive approach to competitiveness. Both of them are very important, and both of them have this ethical value, call it this way, attached to it. So how does it play out in practice? So this slide is slightly more detailed, but what you can see here is the GII 2024 rankings. So the World Intellectual Property Organization issues the Global Innovation Index rankings. That's year to year now, and from year to year it is more and more interesting because new topics are being addressed and new data sets are being included in the analysis. So out of 133 countries that basically are examined because data is available, otherwise it's not, we can see that the US ranks 3rd in the rankings. What I like looking at, because I think it is very important in terms of our performance capacity, is to look at, let's say, the question of university-industry collaboration, patents by origin, and then graduates in science and engineering. So for the sake of this presentation, I looked at the United States, I looked at Germany, I looked at France, I also looked at Hungary, since the workshop is being held in Budapest, but I also looked at Poland, so my country, and then I looked at the underdogs, China, and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia frequently is absent from our conversations on AI because, well, as we all know, it's considered naughty and stuff that follows. But nevertheless, if we want to have a sober analysis of the developments, and if we are able to devise a strategy or an action plan or a suggestion as to what could be done in order to design effective policies promoting AI development in the European Union, I think we do need to have a look at what Saudi Arabia does as well. So have a look at the numbers. So when it comes to university industry collaboration, the US ranks 3rd. Looks at Germany, they are not doing so bad, so 15th, but France is already 35th. If you look at Poland, it's 77th. Hungary is kind of better, which I think is very much attributed to the kind of institutions that we are being hosted at today. So I saw that you also had Nobel Prizes among your achievements and so on. So this is something that several other countries across the European Union are lacking, which also contributes to the problem of fragmentation of our efforts that I've highlighted earlier. Now, please have a look at the number of patents by origin. So the United States ranks 8th, Germany ranks 6th, but France is 13th. Then look at Hungary, it's 45th, and Poland is 28th. But now compare it with China, 2nd, and Saudi Arabia, 48th. Now, what is important as well is the, let's say, percentage of graduates in science and engineering. So in the United States, it's 75th. Yeah, I was very surprised to see this result in the rank. Germany is 7th, France, 41st, Hungary, 67th, Poland 78th, and I'm not compare it with China. China doesn't disclose the data, but if you look at Saudi Arabia, they are 30s. Now, why does it all matter? Well, if we are thinking about developing our AI capacity, call it in this way, which would be then a function of our digital sovereignty in the European Union, then clearly we cannot celebrate the major, how we say, divide that exists between academia, academic research, and what the industry does and what it can do. So this is all about the university industry collaboration. We really need to work on this one. Now, patents by origin. I mean, the European Union has created the European Union Patent Office, but apparently it's still not an incentive sufficient enough to boost the number of applications. If you look at Germany, let's say they are 6th in the rank or in the GII, you may have noticed, or you may be aware of the fact that several of the technical universities, for instance, the Technische Universität in Dresden, which is renowned for its research output, they have an entire office designed to support researchers in the process and the intricacies of applying for a patent. So imagine that every university would have access to this kind of support. This would definitely streamline research. It would definitely make research target-oriented, etc., etc. Otherwise, we are really like losing out. So we have France, but then look at China, the 2nd, and then look at Saudi Arabia, they are 48th. Then graduates in science and engineering, it's a very important issue. Now look at Saudi Arabia. Why is this important? So I've already told you that when looking at AI, it's important to understand what it is and how important data is in relation to building our AI capacity. And whereas there has been like a major surge of data scientists involved in all projects related to AI development, what we really need to do is to invest also in experts capable in sophisticated ways of in processes related to machine learning. We really need more today. There are different language models, and we really need to capitalize on this. Now, why do I talk about Saudi Arabia? Well, because you'll be surprised how many people, including women, are highly skilled in engineering. You would be surprised, but how many really good papers are being published. Frequently, they are not really available to us because they're not of our interest, or they're published, let's say, in a language different than the one that we speak in. Nevertheless, a substantial effort has been undertaken in Saudi Arabia. It's not that I'm bragging or promoting Saudi Arabia. Nevertheless, we really need to see the dynamics emerging here. So whereas, let's say, in the past, you wouldn't possibly associate this kind of developments with this country. These days, we see that the dynamics of change is amazing. And just we really need to see what is done, how it is being done, and whether we can also draw any lessons from it. So this takes us to another point that I would like to raise, which is biases and taboos. So have a look at these points that I had. So for instance, this is from the Draghi report, right? The EU fails to translate innovation into commercialization. Innovative companies that want to scale up in Europe are hindered at every stage by inconsistent and restrictive regulation. What I'm also saying that we have hand steering of what should be left to the entrepreneurial spirit of the market. So my question is it like a form of market phobia that we have in the European Union? Then another question, the venture capital market. Clearly, it is way bigger in the United States than it is in EU. Look at the numbers. Only in 2023, the US startups raised $170 billion in venture funding. We were able to raise $55 billion only. So the market is growing, but we really lag behind. And the European Union venture capital market is highly fragmented, mostly due to national regulations, frequently also lacking regulation. So what we were observing in the United States, like a good 15 years ago, a surge in venture capital, we are still missing it today. But just imagine that we were able to just open and unlock this channel of funding to our startups. This certainly would require that our thinking about the market and the economy changes, at least a little bit. Then there is another point from the Draghi report. There is no EU company with a market capitalization over 100 billion euros. Okay? So that has been set up from scratch in the last 50 years, while all 6 US companies with a valuation above 1 trillion euros have been created in this period. And then this is also interesting. The top 3 investors in research and innovation in Europe have been dominated by automotive companies for the past 20 years. Okay, and this is something that was basically done in the United States in early 2000s. So to me, it says that we are like 25 years back when it comes to capacity building, so quality capacity building up. And then there's another problem that several small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe, they lack resources to comply with the strict AI regulations that we have. So the fact here is that we have fragmented approaches to competitiveness. There is no clear sync between comparable initiatives. There is no easy access to funding, etc., etc. And here I would like us to focus on the Industry 5.0 and the AI Act, which I consider another challenge that we have. So what you can see here is the comparison of the Industry 5.0 initiative launched by the European Commission, mostly in the field of industrial policy, designed for the business sector. And here we have the AI. So I have looked at the key areas like human AI collaboration, high-risk AI in industry, sustainability in green AI, AI transparency and trust, and resilient supply chains. So you can clearly see that there are like similarities, that these 2 acts should be complementing itself, but on several accounts, they do not. So whereas like in the discourse on AI at the EU level, you will hear about AI and AI Act, very rarely you would actually see these 2 initiatives taken together in order to ensure that businesses can drive what the AI is about, and that it can all contribute to us building our, say, digital sovereignty. So I think there is much more that needs to be discussed, and I certainly discuss it with Professor Calzada, because we're also working on a paper. So just an idea. So by means of conclusion, I know I spoke a bit too long. So what is it that we need to consider? So focus on data quality. Data quality has already been highlighted by the OECD in the Frascati report, or Frascati handbook on data quality. Now with the onset of AI and new ways of generating data, storing and so on, we really need to put greater emphasis on the quality of data for a variety of reasons, for it to be transferable, for it to be verifiable, etc., etc., and that it is compatible with the specific data collection systems that we are employing to then work on the data. I would also suggest it's very important that we focus on safe algorithms. In the conversational AI, the argument of ethics and the ethical dimension are very frequently raised. I would suggest that we use the term safe rather than ethical. Ethical basically very frequently leads us to like a distinction 0-1. So you are good or you are bad. And if we want to promote an inclusive approach to AI, because only in this way it will be ethical and morally sound, then I think it's safer to talk about safe algorithms. So focus on an enabling but not a constraining definition. I mean, we've had the discourse on AI for a while now, but like I just feel like we are really talking about something like this Narcissus looking in the water. What is it that you would like to have? So wishful thinking rather than like clear approach and definition. Capacity. Focus on getting out of the current deadlock. Navigate the innovation gap with the US and China, especially in advanced technologies. Focus on semiconductors, collaboration instead of fragmentation. And now policy. This is really like nice stuff. I like. So I've already mentioned before the conundrum or the Nelson Holt that we see between innovation and our innovation capacity in the European Union, then about industrial policy, and finally competition policy. So as you all know, competition policy, belonging to the exclusive competencies of the European Commission, has always prioritized the consumer over the market, which in several instances, think of Microsoft, etc., has resulted basically in companies being discouraged to innovate in the European Union. So the question is, to what extent the European Commission's approach to competition policy, which is highly protective of consumer to the detriment of the business sector, to what extent it can be rethought so as to not to stifle innovation in the domain of AI development. So like a very important issue, and I think one really needs to think about it. And that is a little bit of geopolitics into it, because what I'm thinking is that we really need to focus on a vertical integration of our resources, including talent and experts. So we have seen the data on, let's say, the percentage share of graduates in engineering. We really need to have experts that are capable of dealing with machine learning, data engineering, and so on. So we really need to think about it like from the bottom up to the top. Otherwise, it just won't work. So we can have like quick fixes that will last for half a year, but nothing that will be sustainable. Hence the case of Saudi Arabia. Industry academia collaboration. I also want to highlight this human-computer interaction. This is like a generational change. Now, if we agree that AI as such doesn't have agency, even if it is based also on autonomous learning, it's very important to understand that it is us that will set the tone in line with which AI will actually deliver. So we tend to be biased. The machines have no bias in them. So we transfer the bias we have into the algorithms. So it is very important that we are aware of it. And there is yet another component to it. Someone said at some point that AI has to like us. So the question is, how do we communicate? So it's all about this human-computer interaction. How the new generations and the new generations of scholars and researchers, experts, are capable of communicating with the systems that are unfolding here and now. Definitely it will change in the future, and we can't really predict how much, but we need to do everything we can in order to prepare for it. Then there's another issue, patents and standards. I mean, you may be aware that when it comes to patents, we've already seen the data, but there is also the International Standardization Organization, and basically that works on voluntary standards. One of the key applicants, and let's say the conversation maker in the ISO forum, is China. So if we agree that, or if we can imagine that there are several steps ahead, like the case of DeepSeek suggests of us, then there is nothing coincidental in their strategy to push forward for very specific standards for products and services and processes that are already ready to implement, and we haven't even imagined that they might exist. So the argument of geopolitics returns here. And then there is also horizontal policy responses. I'll be very happy to discuss it. And finally, the approach and navigate bias and policy taboos. I mean, really, no one talks about examples that do not include examples other than the US or China. And there are so many lessons that we can take from other places in the world. And finally, contingency planning. I mean, we are very wishful thinking, we are idealists, we are kind of romantics in the European Union. But what if we fail? So the most recent report published by the UCL scholars clearly suggests that we will become like a colony. But well, we really do need to start thinking about it in more detail. So I'll stop here. Should you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. And the last slide, of course, the organizers have this presentation. This is the special issue that Professor Calzada was so kind to develop, and it was accepted. And we are very happy that we have thus, as the journal, the capacity and the opportunity to host both Professor Calzada and his research, but also papers that will be submitted. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing now, and hopefully we'll have a nice Q&A session afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anna Vesbisi, for your insightful presentation. Thank you, audience. Probably, while I'm just going to wrap up a little bit, some 5 points. I mean, you can raise your hands. Probably there are some comments after this. Anyone in the mid? Do you have another microphone? Or okay, yes. So just while Gesa is going to take the floor, I would like to just wrap up, at least in my understanding, the insightful presentation by Professor Vesbisi. She mentioned many things, as always, but just in a nutshell, AI for whom, AI for what? She mentioned, she emphasized a lot this kind of, let's say, tension between innovation versus regulation trap. She mentioned that. I think it's very permanent, this discussion here. Also venture capital, the model of venture capital in the EU. What's the role of that? Why is not happening? She mentioned another thing that, I mean, in relation to that, the lack of let's say, proactive competitive policy in the EU in relation to the regulation and innovation. She also included very interesting kind of comparison, including Middle East cases like Saudi Arabia, the role of women. Sometimes the gender gap, we forget about this, and the importance of the gender, the women, let's say, role in, at least in Saudi Arabia, according to her, to Professor Anna Vesbisi, in AI. And the last 2 points I already to mention, and she did talk because we have an expert here in a speech lab. He's a speech lab, BME speech lab. So we have expert in generative AI in voice. So human-machine interaction. I think this very interesting point that she mentioned. I didn't actually include in my presentation, so I think it's worth. And the last, before I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Gesa Nemeth, is the hammering of AI, or let's say the Narcissus syndrome, as she mentioned. You know, as Abraham Maslow mentioned, you have a hammer, everything that you see are nails. So it's something that is happening with this conversation that we had last day when I mentioned that there is a lot of noise of AI. Probably we need to unpack data, we need to unpack algorithms, we need to even change, don't think about ethics and think about safe data. I agree with this point, for instance. So please, Gesa, take the floor.
Yeah. Thank you for the call. And I think regarding the conversational area, we have a lot of problems, and for the end user, like, this is the most basic thing, because people tend to enjoy talking more than typing, especially on smartphones where you mistype nearly everything. I have 2 big fingers for the small screen, for example. Now the problem there, I think, is at least 2 or 3-fold. One is that we don't really have even a theoretical framework about what influences about how we talk and about maybe what we talk. So when we speak to each other, we know that now I speak to someone whose language is not native, who is maybe my friend, maybe my topic in which I am not so well versed, and so on. And we do it naturally as humans, as we are trained on that, like over several years. And to train the machines so that they could handle this very important natural thing. My colleague says sometimes that each of our pronunciation is a unique thing in the world, which cannot be repeated. You will say yesterday in the same way, but never in the same way. If you pronounce it, it's different. So here we have, I think, a big lack. So I am very happy that from a business point of view, you brought up this issue, because here we need linguistics, psychologists, maybe, of course, engineering, of being able to cover this whole thing. So this is like a very high level problem. Another, a smaller level problem is the language issue. So there are people who claim that they cover 1,000 languages. Yes, to some extent, maybe. But even if I take English, even which is the biggest market by far, there are a lot of people who are not satisfied with it at all. So not to speak about our small language, we are just 10 million people in Hungary. So I always ask when I start my speech information course to computer engineering students, how many of you use regularly speech recognition or speech synthesis? And then out of 100, maybe 4 and 5 raise their hand. And we cannot say that they are against technology and they are lagging behind. But from the marketing point of view, people say this is a solved problem. So like for a long time, research institutions don't want to fund this sort of work because they say, here is the industry, the product is there. But then we ask, okay, the real users of whether do you use it? And it turns out that people just don't use it. So here again, there is a big gap between like perceived marketing, general understanding and real usage. And then I didn't speak about just the general public, it is just computer engineering students in Hungary. The third issue that relates to this is, I think, a sort of quality assurance, quality evaluation. It's very much valid for the speech area because here we have the languages. So the quality of the provided services can vary a lot across languages, and not only across languages, but across domains. So maybe a technology is okay for a certain domain in a certain situation. For example, like providing railway timetable information, it's okay. But for example, when you are interested in restaurants and the kind of meal that is available there, then maybe that technology is not relevant. So here, I see a very big gap of which there is not real much talk about quality assurance from the user point of view. So for example, for cars, it's quite okay. So you can go to a lot of websites, there's a lot of information if you want to compare cars. But I'm not really aware of any reliable source for comparing, let's say, speech recognition engines in certain scenarios, not to speak about much more complex things as, let's say, compare image processing for cancer image processing systems. And if we want to be in a fair market, that is like, it's a basic thing from a user point of view. Sorry if I was too long. I'm interested in, are you aware of solutions for these issues?
So thank you, Kesa, for your intervention. Any response, either Anna, Esteve, bon dia, good morning as well to you in Barcelona. You are there, you know, so in order to, so any comment from your side, either Anna or Esteve, or here in the room, to Kesa's comment? Probably you are, there's quite a lot of experts in this field here. So
yeah, well, if
please.
you want, well, Jorglet, good morning, everybody. Well, the whole thing is pretty simple. There are things that you have ground truth. I mean, how good a code is, if the mathematical proof is correct, if the cancer segmentation covers the territory that you said, all this is ground truth. So the evolution of any of these systems can be extremely fast. Voice recognition, for example, the quality of voice recognition, we have pretty exact measures of this. We have ground truth. and that can be checked and can be checked automatically, taking the human out of the loop without intervention. So the progress on all these things is very fast. And then there are things where we don't have ground truth. What happened in Tiananmen? We don't have ground truth. If you ask DeepSeek, you will have an answer. If you ask others, you will have another answer because it's a matter of opinions. It's a matter. So the progress is very diverse, depending on if you have ground truth and you can establish correct measures like cancer expansion. We can do cancer segmentation, for example, since many years, way better than any human. Or if we don't have ground truth, where, well, that's the point of establishing ground truth. This is probably the key point in these cases. Also, another thing is how you relate to things, how you interact with most of the interaction with all these systems is computer-based interaction. Some of it goes to mobile, games to mobile, but still the majority of it is computer-based interaction. So it's still the interface that dominates is point and click. We're going to talk about that. Well, through time, this interface will evolve to natural language, that's clear, but that needs the evolution of the physical interfaces that we have that mediate between these two worlds. That will take some time in society. We will see a day that we will talk to the TV for changing channels. This day is not here yet, but we will see it. And we have a mediator that is the remote channel changer and so on. So it's a different thing. When this happens, we will see the change of the interface, but the mediator is the one that determines which interface are you using, not the technology by itself. These are my 2 comments.
Okay, thank you, Professor Esteban Almiral. Yes, Manuel Pio Silva from Lisbon. Yes. We have industry people from private sector, so please, Manuel.
Yes, I'm Manuel from EDP, which is an energy utility company. Just to be honest, and first of all, congratulations to Professor Anna. Great presentation, many insights. I think there is a big problem here when we approach AI. Because here in Europe, I think we are tackling problems that have been already, let's say, discussed by the competition. And for instance, 2 weeks ago, Convoy, as you know, was tackled by Elon Musk and his team. And we, in Europe, I'm not seeing much developments on this area because this goes beyond what we are calling now large language models and human interface, as we know. And they are already tackling this problem, or I don't know if it is a problem, of having the brain directly connected with AI systems. Many ethical issues here, but I think this might be one of the areas that we don't have any. We might have, but here in Europe, but I don't see much advertisement on this, much work on this, and the rest of the questions that we are already discussing here have been settled down by the competition, China, US, and so on. So I think we need to go over this model and see first what are the wishes of our population, because as Geza was saying, many of the problems are being let's say discussed, finding solutions, but they are not the major problems of our population. And this is a kind of a division, or at least I might say we need to put our feet on the ground, and the ground is to see what our population, our European population needs first and before going into research. And with this I conclude. This is just to bring up that the competition is looking at the main problems of their population, and mainly the world population, and we are not going on this path. We are looking at niches. We are trying to find, let's say, research subject there, business there, but there might not be the biggest market of research and also for AI business. Just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Probably some reaction response by Anna from Professor Anna Risbisi.
All right. I think all these are really valid points, and they just add to the conversation or add like new sets of questions. What we do with it, and it's kind of pessimistic to confront the reality sometimes, because we see what China is doing and everyone else. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying. It's just that we need to create the opportunities for businesses and for individuals to actually thrive, rather than being constantly afraid that the regulatory straitjacket will stifle innovation or that there will be no access to capital and so on. But yeah, this is like a broad question, and maybe we're going to turn to it in the discussion section. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your response. Any other comment before we are going to give the floor to the next speaker? I know that there are quite a variety of topics, you know, human-machine interaction, then there was industrial policy, the competition model, the rivalry, China, US. It's difficult to talk about us. It's at least my perception, you know, we have different kind of approaches, different nationalities, countries, member states. So here, even in the room and online, any other, because we are going to move on to something much more specific. Probably this is the reason why I included also the local administration on that. What's the public sector? What's, because we are talking about competition, but what about the governments that are running our societies, our communities? So any comment? The microphone is open. So thank you, Manuel, for taking the floor. Let's give the floor to the next speaker. Okay. So, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I need to talk here. Thank you, Matthias. So let's give the floor to Professor Esteban Miral in SADE Business School in Barcelona. So, bon dia again. Please, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you. You need to unmute.
Yep.
That's it. Please, if you're going to start again.
Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting me and for inviting Igor and my work with Igor and so on in this pretty small thing of how the communication between the local authorities, between the public administration and the citizens will become and will evolve through chatbots. About my personal background, I have a mixed background. I work in AI. I work in AI in Asian and multi-Asian systems, in LLMs actually. Of course, like most of us are working, moving to, or move quite some time ago on LLM, and I also work on innovation, probably I'm better known from innovation and this intersection of smart cities and innovation. So this presentation is a presentation about the public sector and how the public sector and innovation mixes with this new reality. So we are going to talk about public sector and chatbots and how this is going to change many things. One thing that probably we have to take into account, and one thing that we must consider, is this situation. I only put one slide of what is the evolution of all these generative AI and so on, and this is the latest evolution. If you look there, up there, you can see that the latest model that is not released and so on, this is code force. Code force, it's a way to measure the quality of coding of programmers, the quality, how well programmers do code and so on. And we have something that is called the ELO rating, and we are not going to elaborate about the ELO rating, but it's a measure that is very well established since many years, well before AI, as a measure to do these competitions. Of course, it's a competition very well known in programming, very popular a few decades ago, less popular now, but a few decades ago, very popular. The latest model, that is a variation of 03, 04, and so on, is 3045 in ELO. The maximum achieved by a human is 3890, more or less. That is the maximum achieved by a human. So probably this year we will have GPT 4.5, GPT 5 or 4, depending, and so on. We're going to cross this barrier. We're going to cross this barrier, and we're going to have that these large language models can code better than any human on planet Earth. This is nothing, not much new, not very new. In chat, we have seen that long ago. In LLMs, we are approaching this barrier from many different areas. And this is the situation that we have to confront. The recent increase of competition between China and US and so on fuel even more this speed, this tremendous speed that the field is reaching in many areas. Also, the human is being taken out of the loop. We don't rely so much in the pre-training, but in the post-training. The post-training is mostly automatic. Now it's mostly different variations of reinforcement learning, instruction reinforcement learning, RHF, of course, and so on and so forth. So this provides a path of evolution that we don't know the limit now. Maybe it has a limit, but we don't know the limit now. So this is only the beginning. And if we look at the power of processors and so on, one thing that we have to realize, I only put this small slide, is the evolution of GPUs. Below, you can see in this red line here, you can see the evolution, the Moore's law, the evolution of CPUs. That doubles every 18 months, more or less, or 2 years, depending on. This is an empirical law. This is not a physical law, so you have to take it with a grain of salt and so on. On the top, you can see the evolution of GPUs here. And this is only the last 8 years. In the last 8 years, GPUs multiplied by 1,000 the capacity of computing. This has no signs to stop at this point. So this is determined by basically 3 factors: the speed of the CPU, the memory bandwidth that you have in the CPU, and the interconnect of the different CPUs. These are the 3 factors that determines this speed. None of them has any sign to stop so far. So we're going to see even a faster evolution with Blackwell and the new CPUs from NVIDIA and many others. One of the consequences that I think is very interesting for our society and for our life and so on is the user interface. And this talk is focusing on the user interface. We are dominated by this user interface. And this is the STAR project in Palo Alto in the late 70s, and with Alan Kay, that's Alan Kay, and this is the STAR station. And this is the project that Steve Jobs saw and took it to put it into Macintosh. And in this project, they invented things like the mouse. The first mouse was made of wood, was a boot mouse, absolutely mechanical and so on. They invented the folders, they invented all this metaphor that we are so familiar with, was invented in the STAR project in Palo Alto Research Center, Xerox Palo Alto Research Center. And this has been dominated our interaction, not only our interaction with computers, but also our interaction with mobile phones and in general, any device. But this metaphor is changing. We have, for example, here an example of Sierra. Sierra is one of these startups, one of these 1,000 startups that exemplifies the new paradigm that is arising. The paradigm that is arising is the substitution of this point-and-click interface that dominated in the 70s in general in the whole industry through a natural language. Natural language that is text, that can be voice, depending on the mediator that you have. And in this case, here it's a company that specializes on customer service and customer acquisition, so sales. And the next situation that we're going to see is probably the substitution of this point-and-click interface by a simple chatbot. We are seeing that with things like Perplexity. Perplexity is more and more used as a chatbot, as a search engine, replacing in many aspects many of the things of Google. We are seeing that also in research, deep research from Gemini, from OpenAI, even from DeepSeek and so on, are changing the way that we do research, particularly state of the art and so on. And also, we have in different track that we are not going to talk today about, but it's very important for the public administration and the public sector, is how do we use this as a coassistance to increase the efficiency of our organizations. In part, we're going to touch it, but not entirely, and this is the biggest example that we have. This is Lily. Lily is being used since 2 years by McKinsey extensively. The whole organization used Lily. They increased the efficiency of the organization by about 30%. They reduced the expenses by 20%, and this has some important implications in terms of hiring, jobs, the way that they conduct the research that they do, and so on. And it's a chatbot trained with all the projects that McKinsey has been done. It not only points about the answers like the normal chatbots that we are using, but also points about who did this research. So you can contact this person directly and talk to this person to have a view on what you are doing. So this is another aspect of how do we use chatbots. And let's talk about the public sector. The public sector is our focus today, and we selected chatbots. Chatbots is something that is changing the public sector. We selected the whole world and the dimensions of the analysis that we're looking these ones. We are talking about internal, external dimensions of analysis, WhatsApp integration. Why WhatsApp? Well, WhatsApp is meeting the user where the user is in several parts of the world, particularly in Latin America and in Europe. In the US, WhatsApp is not so used. They still use a lot text in Microsoft, in many other variations. WhatsApp doesn't have the wide usage that we have in Latin America and so on. Then the next step is transactional. Can you do transactions in these chatbots so they can do things for you? They have an agentic nature or not? And finally, the last step, and this is something that is going to change probably a lot of what we have in the administration is the chatbots are able to close the bureaucratic divide. I mean, many of us feel completely lost in all these bureaucratic procedures that we normally do one time for a while, one time in a while. We don't do constantly and so on. So we don't want to become experts on this thing. And knowing things, if a regulation applies or not to you, it's sometimes very conflicted because it's not about a regulation. It's about multiple regulations. It's about multiple factors and so on. Well, all the chatbots can condense this thing with a simple explanation. So what do we do? We explore the chatbots in different parts of the world, in America, in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East. And here you have all these dimensions that we're going to talk in detail in a second. I mean, the first one is that probably surprises surprised us a lot is the extension of how in Latin America, particularly Argentina, also Colombia and Mexico, in these three countries, you have chatbots. We are only talking about chatbots powered by generative AI, not traditional chatbots. Traditional chatbots are widely used everywhere. We are only talking about generative AI chatbots. So the ones that can talk, the ones that can express in your language, the ones that can summarize information and so on. Why? Well, all these projects are normally done by small groups. In general, software and generative AI is not done by big groups. I mean, DeepSeek is less than 150 people. In the beginning, OpenAI was about 100 people. Now they are reaching 1,000 people, but not much. And because they are building an extensive sales organization and so on, groups are. You want to know, for example, the group that did OWANT is 18 people, 18. So these are small groups. So you don't need a big group. You need a top group, but you don't need a big group. Of course, you need computing power, and this is not going to stop. I mean, the mixture of experts that we have in DeepSeek is the same kind of technology that Anthropic uses, that in some LLMs of Meta you have. So it's nothing new. The extent of the use of mixture of experts, yes, but and the new part, that is the cross-training, needs a lot of computing power, probably way more than the pre-training that we have seen now that the pre-training is kind of exhausted. So this is the explanation why we have all these groups that do this, that can do these chatbots, and the chatbots that are pretty interesting. We have to distinguish between the chatbots that are external and the ones that are internal. Many of them are external. Why? The ones that are internal are not normally not publicized. And because they are not publicized, well, we don't know about them. In Latin America, WhatsApp is prevalent, so many of them, they use WhatsApp. This is nothing new. I mean, they had previous chatbots that were not being done by generative AI, that was normal chatbots that were already connected to WhatsApp. So the evolution, it's kind of obvious and evident. I mean, the new one has to be connected with WhatsApp. We have to take the transactional here with a grain of salt. When we talk about transactional here in all these examples, normally we are talking about submitting. A typical thing that you do in cities is that you submit something for repairs, and it's a suggestion for repairing things and so on. Or you submit a form for applying to God knows what and so on. So it's not fully transactional in the sense that we understand an agent that will do things for you and will do the follow-up. It was just the submission, but come on, it's a beginning that shows the evolution of that. Closing of the bureaucratic gap, yes, of course. Finding the same information in the website of the city, of the government, it's way more difficult. It's way more complicated, and normally implies finding different kinds of information, being able to merge them, and so on. So they close to the bureaucratic gap. Not only at this level, but also at the level of the communication and the interaction. I mean, chatbots, all these are normally powered by OpenAI chatbots, different variations of OpenAI, and so on. They all adapt to your language, and they do that simply. They do that flawlessly. It's you don't have to train that. And in North America, you have My City. My City is probably the most popular one. It's a chatbot from, it's a business and city info from New York City. That's pretty well known. In San Francisco, you have Page, that is kind of the equivalent. And in Canada, you have another one that is CanChat, and so on. In Africa, we already know South Africa. This is the only one that we know. Let's go to the other part of the world. In the other part of the world, in Asia, we have the usual suspects. I'm sorry. You have the usual suspects in Asia. So Singapore has have been working a lot in the chatbots, and Korea has been working a lot. Here, WhatsApp integration is less. Many of the chatbots, you can only go to the chatbot through the page of the government, local government, municipal government, and so on. One service from Singapore is probably the best well known. Transactional is also limited, like in the previous case, to doing admit this guy. I'm sorry. Let's admit this person. Yeah. Transactional is only limited to submitting forms. In the case of Asian, normally about repair, something that is not working, something that is broken in the city and so on, and then you submit it to ask for repairs and so on, causing the bureaucratic divide. That's of course here probably we have to, but it's difficult to have a graduation because, well, sometimes things are very simple and disclosing it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes things are more complicated. We are in initial stage in all this and so on. In the Middle East, the only one is Dubai. And let's talk about Europe. In Europe, you have probably what is the most ambitious of all these chatbots and so on. This is the Estonia bureaucrat. The Estonia bureaucrat aims or wants, the ambition of the Estonia bureaucrat is to transform the whole Estonian government through a chatbot interface. A chatbot interface that is intelligent and then can follow your procedures and so on. So the full agentic nature of agents that people are working on, many of us are working in the AI sector. And this is the ambition. The reality falls short in this ambition. They did pretty nice things. One interesting thing about the Estonia bureaucrat is that you can integrate not only the existing public sector, but any entity of the public sector, and also the private sector can be integrated in the same chatbot. And this is one of these interesting things. The EU did a few things. One is this one from EUDIGIT that is for internal policymakers, basically about compliance and checking compliance, checking regulations and so on. And they did also another one that is external about general information on regulations and so on, which is normally pretty simple because some of them can be done through the GPTs of OpenAI. That is something that our students do in every project normally. And then you have other ones. In Spain, we have quite a lot of them. In Spain, these are, let's say, probably more proofs of concept with a limited number of users, a few thousands, but a limited number of users. That's something widely used through the population. We had one that was widely used for the population that was very funny. That is one that assists you in doing the taxes, but was not done by the government, was not done by the tax department, but by a private citizen that created this chatbot. And this was very popular. There was some clash and some collision between this private citizen, the press, and the tax department, saying that, well, this is not what the tax department does, and so on. This is not approved by the tax department, but it was very, very interesting. So this is what we have in chatbots. Let's go back for a second. And well, let's talk for a second about the evolution of all these things and how this is going to change. I mean, we are here, we are in the chatbots. The next step that is kind of mixed is RAG system, so you can incorporate a lot of information that is in the public sector, and you can incorporate this information into the chatbot, so it's not limited by what the chatbot learned at the point, but you can use this thing. Another aspect is fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is especially important when you have a different kind of language. This is the case of legal. The way that you reason in legal is not the normal way that we reason in Audi, because you have some hierarchy of information that depends on the legal system. Past legal cases in the Saxon system count a lot. In the South European system don't count that much. And you have to understand all these kind of things. So you have to do this specific training to the chatbot and fine-tune the chatbot to this way of thinking that is not the normal one. What is happening now, what we are seeing appearing is chatbots that have a agentic nature, so they can do things for us. We have Operator that was released by OpenAI a few weeks ago that can take tickets for planes, can book tickets for planes, can do all these kind of things for you, and of course, also they can fill forms for whatever you need them to fill. This data were agent-based and including transactions, doing that in your name. Booking a flight is including transactions. Booking a restaurant is including transactions. But you can also do way more complicated things. So this is the weight of evolution. In the public sector, we are here. In the private sector, we are here. So there is a gap between the private and public sector. Depending on the private sector, if it's a general purpose like Operator, we are here. And then the other ones, depending on the competitive intensity, where the firm is situated, you have different ways of evolution and so on. What are the implications for the public sector? Well, the first implication is services, equity, and inclusivity. Yes, being multimodal, being able to attend the citizens 24/7, 365 days a week, it's important. Adapting to a existing language, cultural background, level of knowledge in a certain thing also is important. Disclose many devices. And if the citizen is the one who chooses the channel and not the administration. So if you meet the citizen where it is, whatever is in WhatsApp or whatever is in other environments, this also talks about inclusivity, about easiness to be there. Probably the most important one is the bureaucratic divide. We all are puzzled many times by trying to understand what is the rationale and how many regulations and laws apply to us and how many forms and why on earth we have to fill 20 times the same information that the government has in many other places. Crossing this divide is probably one of the biggest contributions and one of the biggest opportunities for the public sector. And collapsing this complicated regulation. There are in engineering right now quite a lot of procedures in order to collapse this information and establish the data sets for fine-tuning and training chatbots with conflicting regulations and conflicting information. That is what normally you have not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Of course, way more extensively in the public sector than in the private sector. And the agentic capacities is the holy grail, this capacity of doing things for you and doing things at a scale without your intervention. Of course, you always will be in control of what you do, but if you have to fill 20 times the same information in 20 or 30 different forms, which is kind of useful for all of us in the administration, this can be a really game changer, not only for the citizens, but also for the public sector. And this is the last implication, this capacity of transforming the public sector from what it is now to something that is more related to code, where legislation is condensed and collapsed into an actual legislation and not a myriad of different legislations that you have to put them together and try to extract what is the actual state. And this is what the implications are, and this is where we are. One of the things that we have to talk about is the new developments. And the new developments is, one of them is DOGE in the US. And DOGE is for a group of techies, probably of a different ideology than the one that you have in the existing administration, in the existing US administration, but they are working on custom chatbots. This is the last one that they are working on, GSA AI. And these custom chatbots, the ambition is to put legislation, regulations into code. so they can autonomously decide or not decide many things and do things in seconds, like approve or disapprove certain things and so on. This is an ambitious thing, and you may agree or not, depending on your ideology, depending on how it's implemented, depending on many, many things. But it's worth to know that this is the ambition that they're having. GSA, for example, this is the case, has 12,000 employees, and the chatbot will be used to analyze contracts, to analyze procurement, and so on. All this is already done in the private sector. Compliance, it's one of the typical uses of LLMs inside companies. And in certain ways, what they're trying is to transplant these usage in many big companies to the private sector. And, well, they want to deploy all these tools to the American administration, but not only chatbots, but copilots, GitHub copilots, things like Cursor, that is a very popular copilot for programming, and many, many others. And this is something to take a look and probably be attentive of what is happening there, because it will be a new wave of how to put technology into the administration, and a new wave of change for the administration. So thank you so much, Poshomont, and thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you very much, Esteve, for your insightful presentation. Well, we have seen, we have moved from the macro perspective, from the competitive industrial policy, this kind of trap between regulation and innovation. And then you have just developed a very great presentation in very specific cases. Probably I have seen some people that probably wanted to interact. I'm particularly interested in the dominance of WhatsApp. For example, you mentioned in Latin America. So I don't know if you have any, the dominance, when I say dominance, means that the dependency on WhatsApp. So I don't know if you have any take on this. In Latin America was very, very dominant, probably in Europe in some cases as well. And then the second question before, I'm going to open the floor for comments is Estonia. Estonia has been very much interested, at least over the last 8 years in my research as well. I've been working in Tallinn. So you mentioned something that the case that we're actually analyzing about how the public is also connected with the private, and something that is sometimes very difficult to achieve, I don't know if it's anything to relate with the X road, the software that they're using that probably is very much connected with my previous presentation, and how, for example, explainable AI is being used in this regard. So I don't know if it has anything to do or not. So there are two questions. In the meantime, I'm opening the floor for commenting. So what's your take on this?
Well, let's start by the end with explainable AI, and then let's go to Estonia and so on. Explainable AI is getting insights. If you go to DeepSeek or you go to Gemini Deep Search and so on, you will see the whole thread of reasoning. Or you go to OpenAI O3 or O1 and so on, you will see the whole thread of reasoning and the documents that support this whole set of reasoning when they develop something. This is the new addition that happens. If you don't have access to these new models from OpenAI because they are only available in the US, you can use Google Gemini Flash that also shows you the whole thread of reasoning and so on. This is explainable AI, well, to some extent. I mean, the big problem the big engineering problem in explainable AI is that, well, you can dig down to a lot on explainable, but if you go into any social problem, they are hugely multifactor. So you will end up with something that is explained by 100,000 factors. And you will need thousands of pages to understand why this vision. I mean, our vision that this will be explained by 3 factors, this doesn't happen. If you go to a model that has a high accuracy, this will be explained by some of them completely random or looking random because you don't know the confounder of this factor and so on. So in a way, it's kind of a dream because, well, if you are confronted with an explanation that takes into account 100,000 factors, who can dig into that? And these are the reality of any deep social explanation. They are hugely multi-factor, and this is what you see when you train the model. And that this explanation, if you try to select the 3 or 4 factors that are more important in any model, even student model, I don't know, like the Titanic, and you select the sex, age, and fair, and so on, you will see that your accuracy goes down extremely a lot. If you want a high accuracy, you will have to be multi-factor. And then the explanation increases tremendously. So that's for the explanation. We have a lot in explainable AI. And then the problem is to what extent this explainable AI is useful to anything when you have really complicated, not complex, many times complicated, I mean, with lots of information, explanations for a simple factor. And then let's go to Estonia. You are absolutely right, Igor. It's what is happening in Estonia in the new chatbots, in the new generative AI chatbots follow the lead of what they had in the previous government of Estonia, and then this kind of including at least some of the leading companies in Estonia in the user interface and in the at that time in the websites of the government with direct links and so on. Now being included in the chatbots, using this ambition of having a single user interface for the citizens of Estonia to deal with many of the things that happen in Estonia. Not everything is nothing new. Is something that has been ongoing there for many years.
Okay, thank you very much, Esteve, for your response. Any comment about the presentation that we had on chatbots? Okay, I suggest that probably we need to energize a little bit and we have coffee. So let's be back in let's say 10 to 15 minutes max, and then let's open the discussion for with the speakers as well. So thank you very much indeed.